experiential learning, right? This idea of testing out our beliefs, which is really at the core of all cognitive therapy, right? So at the end of the day, what differentiates Beck's cognitive therapy from, say, Ellis and things like rational emotive behavior therapy and things like that is the idea of guided discovery, right? Or collaborative empiricism. So Beck believed that Ellis had the right theory, but he really thought that some of the ways he was going about it were very challenging, right? And the idea that when you confront somebody or bust their belief or challenge their thoughts, people can become really defensive. And if we think about things like motivational interviewing, a lot of the research underneath motivational interviewing kind of backs that up, right? When we feel challenged, we're less likely to change the way that we're thinking. We're more likely to dig into the way that we're thinking. Also, you don't need any research. You can just think about anytime you've been at a family gathering and somebody challenges the way you see something, pushes the way that they're seeing something. Nobody enjoys talking to that person, and you don't change your mind anyway. So at the end of the day, we really embrace this idea of collaborative empiricism, right? Or this idea of guided discovery. It's this idea of changing the way that we see the world, but using guiding. There was a great clinician in a workshop one time who said, "Oh, we do the guiding, they do the discovering." So one of the methods of guided discovery really revolves around this experiential learning, which is testing out our thoughts in action. And many of the individuals in the field these days really have returned us back to the idea that we need to change these beliefs, that we change beliefs through action. I think I recently heard Christine Podesky, who wrote Mind Over Mood. She said 75% of Socratic questioning or guided discovery needs to happen outside of the seat, right? So we really want to be active. Also, if you're on a team, that's really the purpose of coordinated specialty care, is that we really want to be active in the work we're doing. Also, you look at people like Daniel Freeman, the Feeling Safe program is really designed to be a road warrior type intervention. We should not be sitting here just talking at people. We should be up and active and testing things out and practicing things together with the individual that we're serving. So when we're thinking about restructuring, we want to step back and think about the fundamentals of cognitive therapy, right? Because a lot of times we can just jump in and do an intervention. So when we think about the fundamentals of cognitive therapy, we really start with this idea of identifying the exact cognition that the person's having. We really want to identify what is going through that person's mind. Once we identify the exact cognition, then we want to check it. And there's lots of ways we can check it, but activity and action are going to be the main ways that we do that. Whether it's reflecting on very recent activity that the person's engaged in themselves, or reflecting on the activity that they've done right in session that day. Once we've sort of checked out that cognition, we're going to correct it. We're going to look to make it a little bit more helpful of a thing to tell yourself, or a little bit more accurate, right? Is it helpful? Is it helping you feel better? Is it getting you toward the things that you want in your life? Is it accurate? Is it even true? I'll be honest, most of the time when I'm doing, whenever I'm doing restructuring, I almost always lean into the helpfulness of the cognition over the accuracy, because helpfulness is right there. You and I can sit down and have a conversation, and we can say, is it helpful to tell yourself nobody on this video is enjoying it? No, I don't feel better when I tell myself that. It doesn't make me want to make more videos when I do that. It might be accurate. Nobody might like this. It may not be accurate. One person might like this. Who knows, right? But it might not be accurate. But I can end up in a wonderful academic exercise of logic about whether people like it or whether people don't like it. But helpfulness is right there. I'll tell you right now that if I sat here and said nobody's enjoying this video whatsoever, I would not feel better, and I would be less likely to do the things that I need to do in my life. I would be less likely to set up my next workshop. I'd be less likely to cut a video and post it. I'd be less likely to show up with full gusto to my next supervision, right? I would be less likely to do the things that I need to do. So it's definitely not helpful to tell myself that. Once we identify a more helpful and a more accurate thought, at that point, we need to change our behavior. The reason cognitive therapy doesn't work most of the time is that many people end with changing the person's thought or helping correct the person's thought, but never moves to, now that you see the world differently, what are you going to do differently? That is the actual step of what cognitive therapy is about. Cognitive therapy is not a therapy of thinking. Cognitive therapy is a therapy of action. What are you going to do differently? At the end of the day, the outcome of experiential learning is restructuring some of these unhelpful thoughts, but also strengthening the positive beliefs as well, and strengthening the positive thoughts as well. So we can really build up all of the positive thoughts that an individual has, so it chokes out all of the negative thoughts. We can also undermine some of the unhelpful thoughts or inaccurate thoughts, right? So we can kind of go at it in two directions. So the formulation, right? So the first thing that we need to do is really identify what is going through the person's mind. What we know is for any given obstacle that the person might have, there's many things that they might be telling themselves. So for example, for a voice hearer may be telling themselves, the voices come and go as they please, so I can't go out and do the things I want to do. The voice hearer may be saying, these voices are a credible source of data, right? And so they're telling me I can't go out and I can't go do the things that I want to do. So they're credible because I'll get hurt. So they're credible. So I need to listen to them. So it's really important that I know, is it that the voices come and go as they please, and I'm going to look, I'm going to look ill and somebody's going to hospitalize me again? Well, if that's what I'm telling myself, then we are going to test that. If I believe that the voices are credible, that's going to be a very different test that we're going to set up. So or a very different approach in correcting that belief. And so it's important that we know what is the thought before we do that. And we also see that in things like avolition. If I tell myself, why try, things aren't going to work out anyway, and that gives me less motivation to do things, we're going to test that out in one way. If I have a belief of I can't do things until I get the energy, we're going to test out that belief in a very different way. If you correct one belief, if you correct the wrong belief, that's like doing surgery on the right knee when the left knee is what's hurting, or doing physical therapy on the right knee when it's the left knee that's hurt. Probably doing physical therapy on your right knee isn't that bad. It's great, but your left knee is still the problematic knee, right? And so really thinking about making sure that we catch that well. So really what we're talking about is chain analysis. When something comes up that blocks somebody moving forward, I was gonna go apply for that job. Oh, what came up? Nah, I just couldn't. Well, walk me through it. What made it hard? Well, it was the voices. Okay. I want to see the way you see it. So you were getting ready to apply for the job. What happened next? Right? And we're really going to draw up a lot of imagery. We want them to almost relive the experience. And we're going to be looking at what happened. We're going to look at what were they feeling, right? What was happening in their body? What did they do? And then ultimately, what went through their mind? And you can elicit it in any way you want. I frequently aim for what happened first. Then I look at what were they feeling, because we're more aware of what we're feeling than we are of what's going through our mind. But once I revisit it, right, and I go through that cycle and I identify what I was feeling, what was happening, it's a very easy thing for the thought to plop out of my mind, out of my mouth. Well, I knew the voices were telling me the truth, so I couldn't leave the house. Okay, great. And then ultimately, what did you do? And then really going through the cycle to see, okay, when you listened to the voices and you knew that they were telling you the truth, right? What did you learn from that? Well, if I hadn't listened to the voices, then a bad thing would have happened to me. So we really get that full cycle of what's happening and understanding how is it ultimately being maintained. There's a whole other video on chain analysis and guided discovery. So you guys can go back and watch that if you want to. But using a lot more imagery. Frequently what happens is we'll ask, oh, what was your automatic thought? And a lot of people go, I don't know. And so classically, what we can do is go, okay, walk me through it, and using imagery. And imagery is really powerful in eliciting what the automatic thought was. And then what we want to do is really set up and link up that cycle, right? We want to hear, what were you telling yourself? What did you feel? What was that like for you? And then ultimately, what did you do? Right? Okay, so when you told yourself, and if you notice, I use these hand motions a lot in my sessions. I go, okay, so when you told yourself the voices are telling you the truth, if it felt really scary, right? And so then you stayed at home, right? When you told yourself, oh, the voices come and go as they please, right? You felt threatened, and so you stayed at home. So I can really pull together that whole cycle for the individual. And when you stayed at home, you felt relieved, right? Because you weren't in danger anymore. But it also let you know that you're more in danger and the voices are going to come and go as they please. So we're going to set up this cycle. Once the person goes, yes, now all of a sudden we've got targets for testing. Okay. Well, could we test it out? Could we see? Do the voices come and go as they please, right? We can sort of test that idea out with the individual. Right? We could also test it out from activity that they've recently done, or we could test it out using activation in the moment. So there's two routes that we go now in the way of behavioral experiment. One of the ways that we do it is proposing a test. Wow, that sounds really weird. Can we test that out? And they might go, oh, I'm not sure, right? Or they might go, oh, yeah, we could test it out, right? Once you set that pattern of, oh, the voices come and go as they please, so I stay at home because I feel scary, we can see, do the voices come and go as they please? Does the individual have control over the voices, right? And we can set up the pattern and then propose a test. What if we bring the voices on? And then what if we try something really silly to make the voices go away? Could we try that out together and see what happens? Well, I don't think that that's going to work. Perfect. Nothing better than a converted skeptic, right? Really helping that individual go, really grab onto that idea. And so we're going to set up that test. The other thing we can do is just test the cognition and check it right in the moment, right? We may use the activation. So the person may go, well, the voices come and go as they please. Well, we've been talking for a while. How much of the voice has been talking? Well, I haven't talked at all. Huh. So who chose to talk to me? Well, I did. What would have happened if you had walked in here and not talked to me at all? Well, I don't know. I mean, I guess the voices would have gotten louder. Do you think anybody ever shows up and doesn't talk to me? Now, very sweet. A lot of people go, no, nobody would ever do that. I mean, you're a doctor, right? Or you're my therapist. I go, you want to know the honesty? Some people refuse, come in and don't talk. So then if some people don't talk and their voices get louder, and you came in and talked and your voices got quieter, even if we were talking about the next Marvel phase, who made the voices go away, right? So we're using the activation. We may be using the walk, or we may be using any of those things to help that individual test out that belief, right? We went for a walk for 20 minutes and you have more energy, not less energy. Shouldn't you have had less energy? Oh, I guess I should have. And yet you have more energy. Let's test that out. What might that mean? Let's keep testing that out. The other thing we can do is have them just reflect on sort of 2 days side by side. So I'm going to play a video right now. And this is one that I've shown a number of times, but this is focused on voices. But it's really this way that we can very quickly test out and test out this idea of when you do more, the voices are less. When you do less, the voices are more. And the person goes, well, the voices come and go as they please. So here's just a quick video.
Let's look at 2 days and compare them. So, what day did you not do much this week? Okay, yesterday? Alright, so what did you do for most of yesterday? Okay, you're pretty much in your room all day. Okay, that's a good example of not doing much. Well, it sounds like Tuesday was pretty busy. So what did you do on Tuesday? Oh, you started By exercising. That's pretty cool. And then what? Oh, wow. So you walked the whole way? Well, that's pretty cool. That old man is nice. Oh, was he helpful? Okay. Well, that's really cool. Hey, you got to catch up with the crew. That's nice. And then you talked on the phone late at night? Oh, that's really cool too. Wow, that is a busy day. So just to summarize, yesterday, you pretty much stayed at home the whole day. But Tuesday, it seems like you woke up, you got some exercise in. Then you went to the doctor and got a chance to meet with him. And then you met up with some friends a little bit later on. And finally, you got to talk with your team later on at night. Which day did your voices bother you less? The day when you stayed at home, or the day when you had all those activities? Right, the day when you had all those activities. Interesting. We should pay attention to that.
So again, just a very simple way in which we're taking the activity, right? When somebody has this idea, we can take their activity from the week and start testing this idea of, do they have control, right? Because that sort of side-by-side comparison, while we can use that to propel them into activity scheduling, we can also sit there and go, who chose to do that? Who chose to get up, right? What do you think would have happened on the day when you stayed at home if you had just said, I'm going to get up and do stuff, listen to music, go to the, watch videos, things like that? And the individual might say, oh, well, I would have felt better, right? My voices would have been quieter. Okay. And so let's keep testing that out, right? That's sort of, my catchphrase is, that's weird. We should pay attention to that, right? And you can do that over and over and over again, right? Because really what we're looking at is this idea of overlearning. We want the individual to overlearn the idea that, oh, there are all these things that I can do that give me control over my voices, right? So we're going to overlearn the idea that we can do these things. So I might go out for a walk. I might go out for a walk 7 times until they sort of really overlearn, oh, when we go for a walk, I have more energy, right? When we go for a walk and we get out and do things and we use worry postponement, the worry stays away. So it's that real idea of overlearning. So when we're developing the test with the individual, we're going to identify a test for the thoughts, right? And so it might be bringing on the voices and doing look, point, name. It might be, if I have the thought, nobody will talk to me if I go out. We might go, okay, great. Well, how could we test that out? Well, we could go to the coffee shop and say hi to the person, right? Or we could say hi to people in the hallway, right? So there's all of these ways. Once you have the thought, collaboratively, you're going to figure out, how can we test that idea? Is it worth testing out? And how can we test that idea out? Once you test all of those ideas out, once you identify a test for the thought and go through them, we're going to define the meaning. So if we go to the coffee shop and nobody says hi to you, what does that mean, right? What would that mean? If you go to the coffee shop and a person says hi to you, what does that mean? So again, if we come up with an outcome that confirms the person's belief, we're going to help them generate alternate explanations. If you go to the coffee shop and you say hi, and they don't really say anything to you, what could it mean? Well, it could mean nobody wants to talk to you, right? So we start with their belief. But it could also mean that they're just really busy. It could mean that the person's rude. It could be that the person has really bad social anxiety, right? We're going to come up with a million explanations as to why somebody doesn't say hi to you when you go into the coffee shop. If it supports it, we're going to go, well, what would that mean? We go, oh, sometimes when we try stuff out, when we talk to people, they do say hi to us, right? We're going to keep it small, right? You don't want to give this sort of avalanche, because then a person becomes defensive, right? If I go to the coffee shop and somebody says hi, and then you go, people will always like you. Person goes, I don't think so. But we go, if people say hi, I go, hey, when you say hi to people, every once in a while somebody says hi. Other times people are busy. They go, okay, they can buy into that. And then we're going to conduct the test. And then it's really that process of overlearning. We want them to do it over and over and over again. Through the week, they're going to test that idea out, right? If it's about voice control, they're going to test the voice control out throughout the week. If it has to do with energy, they're going to test it out throughout the week. So conducting a test means that you're going to be collecting data. So any way that they can keep track of it. It may be that the next member of the team that sees them, they let them know. It may be that they message you somehow. It may be that they write, I mean, obviously the best would be that they write it down and they keep track of it on a chart every time they go for a walk. But it really provides this opportunity of conducting that test and then conducting it over and over and over again. Once they conclude the test, we want to help them draw that conclusion from the experience. That's why doing tests in session first are so powerful, right? Going to the worry intervention. That first time you have somebody do worry postponement in session, when they do the worry postponement, we have them predict, oh, you can't do any, there's nothing you can do to stop worry. They stop the worry. You go, what did you make of that? Are you still worrying? I'm not worrying at all. What does that mean? Oh, maybe that's wild. Maybe I could stop the worry. And then what we want to do is set those plans to keep testing. And that's practicing and collecting data throughout the week. We want to constantly test that over and over again. If we're talking about walking leads to more energy, when can you do that? Who can you do that with? How can you vary the ways in which you test it? The idea that activity or talking with people makes your voices go down. How do we test that over and over again? What does that mean about your control over the voices? And so we're going to continually test that over and over and over again. And then the final piece of it, and the important piece of it, is now that you're seeing it differently, what are you going to do differently? Part of the changing of the behavior is the next test that they're going to do. And then part of it will eventually be, we got to live our lives differently. If we're not going to have episodes because we're worrying, well, then we need to start living our life. What are we going to do differently? And so really always focusing in on changing the behavior. If you're supervising people doing cognitive therapy, always look on that, changing the behavior at the end of it to really cinch in the change. So that's sort of a brief overview of how we can do a behavioral experiment, how we can pull it together to test some of those thoughts out.